Hello, Wendy.
Hello.
You spent a lot of time researching this space. Has there been any regulatory move that made you think, okay, this time it's for real?
Yes, this week.
Alright, and that's exactly what we're going to be covering today. This week, as we know, the market was down and the fundraising got slow. But the US regulators made a move that really mattered, actually. They classified 16 digital assets as commodities and not as securities. And that directly changed the legal position of on-chain fundraising. I know you've been following this space closely, so if you had to sum up this week's shift in one sentence, what would that be?
Yeah. I'll put it this way. For the first time, on-chain fundraising has a clear legal identity. For the past 5 years, the biggest problem with IDOs and public token offerings was never really the tech. It was always one question: is the token a security or not? Because if it is a security, then you are dealing with SEC registration, right? For the most teams, that's just too heavy. You are talking about millions in legal costs, timeline of more than a year, and a process mostly early stage projects simply can't handle. So what happened? A lot of teams either gave up or moved forward in a legal gray zone. That's what made the risk so high. What happened this week is that 16 major digital assets, including ETH, XRP, and ADA, were traded as digital commodities, and that matters a lot because once that becomes clearly, the legal footing for fundraising activity built around those ecosystems also becomes much clearer. So whether you call it an IDO or ICO, the key point is this: it is now much more likely to fall under a commodity style framework rather than a security ones.
Okay, I see, and that would lead me to ask the obvious follow-up question being, for a normal project team, how big is actually the difference between the SEC and the CFTC?
Yeah, it's huge. Not a small difference, a completely different level. If you go through the SEC route, the compliance cost can easily land somewhere around $2 or $5 million. And the timeline can stretch to 12 to 18 months, sometimes more. You also need strong legal support to whole way through. That framework was built for traditional capital markets. It was not built for a small startup team trying to launch something innovation on chain. Under a commodity style framework, the focus is much more on preventing fraud and manipulation. The burden is still there, of course, but it's much lighter. The cost is lower, the process is faster, and for many teams, that changes everything.
So basically, a lot of good on-chain projects didn't actually fail because the market rejected them. It was rather that they got crushed by the compliance before they even get to reach their users. And after this week, that wow actually got a lot lower. So why is this happening now?
Yeah. I think two things became ready at the same time. First, the political environment changed. Right now, the policing mood is clearly more crypto friendly, and the enforcement posture has also been shifting. That kind of window didn't really exist in the same way over the last few years. And the second, the market became too big to ignore. Stable coins alone are already a $310 billion market. At that size, regulators can't keep pretending this is still just some gray area experiment. And to some point, they have to decide what it is. So honestly, this didn't happen because the industry asked nicely. It happened because the market got big enough that regulators have to take it seriously.
Yeah, that's definitely a really interesting point. So now zooming out a bit and asking a rather bigger question being, what does all of this have to do with what Synbo has been building?
Yeah, the connection is very direct, and I'd say it works in two ways. The first is legal validation. Civil is building an on-chain primary market, a place where projects can raise capital openly from communities on-chain, and where ordinary users can access early stage opportunities much easier. That's the core idea. So, when the legal identity of on-chain fundraising becomes clearly, it directly strengthens the logic behind what Synbo is doing. Because one of the biggest external barriers for any platform like Synbo has already been regulatory uncertainty. When the legal category is unclear, everybody becomes conscious. Projects hesitate, community hesitate, builders hesitate. Now, for the first time, that uncertainty is being reduced in a meaningful way.
And you mentioned there were two ways. So what about the second way?
The second is that this moment also proves why Cebu needs to exist. We looked at the primary market over the past 4 weeks. Total fundraising was over $1 billion, but the part that retail users could directly access never went above 3%. That means the other 97% was still locked inside private institutional rounds. Access was still controlled by relationships, qualifications, and closed networks. And that's exactly the structural problem Symbol was to solve. We believe on-chain fundraising should not be an institutional privilege. It should be a market where anyone with judgment, conviction, and insight can participate earlier. And now our product is fully live. So if you have something you want to bring on chain, an idea, a technical version, or a real project you want to build, you can create your club or symbol and start rising.
All right, so to sum it up, this week regulation gave a total of 16 digital assets the status of commodities. And for the first time, it gave on-chain fundraising an actual real legal footing. And at the same time, we have Symbol opening the on-chain primary market to the world. And more super individual and digital beings are now coming together on Symbol.
Yes, exactly. And I think this is the most important message for founders. Legal doesn't mean easy, but legal means you can finally build seriously. So yes, welcome to Symbol.
Thank you, Wendy, and see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week.